Welcome to our session, Transforming the Lesson. We've recorded the session on the unceded traditional territories of the Clytli, where the two rivers meet, Tene, the people, where we now live, work, and play. We are committed to building relationships with the First Peoples where they are based on honor and respect, and we thank them for their hospitality. We are here to share simple and easy ideas to transform the lessons to become open and inclusive.
Hi there, my name is Dr. Bill Gottschall, and I am an instructor at the College of New Caledonia and also at the University of Northern British Columbia, both which are situated in Prince George, BC. I teach in the departments of Women's Studies, Sociology, Criminology, and Anthropology, and my areas of interest are Sexuality Studies, Gender Studies, Masculinity, and Media.
And I'm Carolee Klein. I'm the Open Education Advisor with BC Campus and a PhD candidate with the University of Northern British Columbia who wants to see universal design for learning the go-to framework throughout education, creating open and inclusive learning spaces for everyone. In the session today, we will explore some ideas for simple ways to transform your lessons to become open and inclusive for all your students. Great part to start with is to engage your learners. Create the safety and the welcoming place. Proactively reduce the barriers will help. And ultimately, an engaged learner makes for optimal learning experience. It's important to engage your learners for reasons of emotion. Emotion has traditionally been under-recognized as a contributing factor to engagement and learning. But recent research has identified this as a key factor and worth paying attention to. It's important for reasons of participation. Learning is socially constructed, so to encourage active participation is a benefit for your learners. And meeting your students where they are, not necessarily where you expect them to be, is an important part of creating safe spaces. Open pedagogy. Rooted in social constructivism and critical pedagogy, open pedagogy is about empowering students. This shift means turning over the lesson to the students, enabling their engagement, and allows the conversation to change direction as students may need to deepen the conversation around specific points. This can be done in small ways, such as allowing them the voice and letting them speak of their understanding. This may also mean that a class doesn't complete the intended daily targets, but the deeper learning will remain with your students longer than just plowing through the content. Practice of engaging students as creators of information rather than the simple consumers of it. It's a form of experiential learning in which students demonstrate understanding through the act of creation.
So part of the transforming the lesson for me is looking at the barriers. A lot of barriers exist. Some are invisible to us as instructors, but in our new normal, you have things like distractions, home distractions, work distractions. So we should, when we can, be flexible in our classroom practices at these times. This can help. Adjust expectations to the changing times, and especially now that we're all working from home. You still need to be rigorous, but you can do this in a more flexible way and provide options to your students. Be mindful of the conflicts between work, home, and school life. They are living lives that we've not had to deal with as students. And this can also either enhance their engagement or impede their engagement. Time is a challenge for everyone in a fast-paced world. So again, be more flexible. Financial barriers. When you can, use open resources. Try and reduce these financial barriers for your students. And also be mindful of the competing demands, resources, space, and all the things that the students are dealing with. This is part of overcoming some of these barriers to engage your students to be able to change up the lesson. So, some small steps that you can take in your classroom. So, how in your traditional delivery do you include students' voices and experience? All of us, I'm sure, understand that as a student, you like to have your voice heard. You like to feel like you're not being talked at, that you're being engaged in the conversation. So really find ways to bring your students' voices out. Are the materials that you're building upon only providing one perspective? And a lot of instructors and academics have this idea where you present the perspectives that speak to you, In my classroom, I may not agree with all the perspectives and theories that I present, but I owe it to my students to present all sides so that they can make a choice. Can your students see themselves in examples or case studies? So wherever possible, you should always, always, always try and provide examples or films or documentaries that would speak to as many of your students as possible. I always tell my students in the classroom that learning is interactive, so you should always give voice to not just your marginalized students and marginalized voices, but to all of your students. So never give voice to your domestic students to the detriment of your international students or vice versa. All voices should be heard. Sometimes this can be as simple as asking students to share their experiences. So if you're talking about a topic that you look out into your classroom and you can see students who probably live this reality, ask them to weigh in on this. Ask them to give their voice. It's also important to set a culture of safety within the classroom, reminding students that this is a safe space, and I always make sure that I tell my students that it is a safe space where I do my best for their voices to be heard, and they can feel comfortable that their voices are going to be heard in a respectful way. It's also a dialogue. It's never I'm the expert and you are the learner. In my classroom, 1 minute I can be the learner and switch to expert and vice versa, and the same for my students. So a master's course, traditional methods. How do you keep the voices of marginalized people and allow previously silenced voices to come out? So I'm doing a graduate course on advanced feminist methods and talking about how do you do these methods and allow marginalized voices and marginalized perspectives and experiences to come through traditional methods while keeping the rigor of that particular discipline. So, examples of small changes that you can make. So, in the classroom, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. What are some small, everyday changes that you can make? And often, from class to class, year to year, I will sit down with myself and think about what worked, what didn't work, what small changes can I make. So some of the things that I do is find culturally relevant examples. So in my classes, we do a lot of media stuff, a lot of gender stuff, advertising, images of women and men in advertising. And I find this exciting, but I was wondering why a lot of my international students were not typically engaged and why they weren't having fun like I was having fun. Then I realized that if I looked for some examples that spoke to their culture, for instance, I'm showing a lot of Western celebrities and a lot of Western examples of media that they may not be familiar with and it doesn't resonate. So doing the easy work of just trying to find a movie that comes from their culture. So has celebrities from Bollywood. And I found when I did this that students immediately became more engaged and you could see it in their demeanor, you could see it in their face, and they thanked me for doing this. Use students' backgrounds to provide a different voice. So when you're doing even the Western examples, asking your students, so how does this operate back home? So if we're talking about family or we're talking about marriage or we're talking about dating, so what does that look like in India? What does that look like in Japan or in China? And allowing them to see themselves and their experiences in your examples. Listen to examples that your students can bring. So in one of my classes, we talk about the class and the caste system. Obviously, I talk about the class system, and the caste system is an Indian example. And so I would ask my East Indian students who live this, who come from this, to tell the class about the Indian caste system. That not only engages my East Indian students because they're getting to talk about their culture, which they miss and are very proud of, but it also engages my domestic students because they're hearing not just the old academic guy spewing theory, they're actually hearing from people who've lived this experience. So again, just the small changes that you can make. It allows students to feel much more part of the classroom, much more part of the discussion. It allows them to share their knowledge. And it also fosters peer learning. So in this instance where my East Indian students were talking about the caste system, after that, a lot of the domestic students were actually asking questions. So just small things.
Thank you for joining us today. transforming the lesson. And if you've got any questions or any comments, you want to get in touch with us, this is our contact information. And here are some of the references we used.